Hey guys, welcome back to the Chop Block. It's me, Mike Brown, and last week's episode was an interesting one. It was definitely a learning experience, non-educational. But I think that on today's episode, I'm definitely going to bring a little bit more variety in terms of education and information, if you will. So today I have joining me a good friend of mine. I think he might be one of the few college graduate friends that I have. Sir, would you like to introduce yourself?
Happy Sunday, everybody. My name is Drew, and unfortunately, yes, I am a product of the system.
Product of the system. I don't know how to take that, but some of the things we're going to be talking about today, which things that I've always found interesting, and Drew can definitely add a lot of knowledge to this, is graphene, the future magical, wonderful product that is going to be the next plastic, or Drew had mentioned asbestos, which is going to be in everything, as we come to find out, and also to all the wonderful technology that could come out of that, and also maybe some of the bad stuff that could come out of that as well. Excuse me. We're also going to be talking about nanotechnology, which is very, very big and going to be huge in the future, and I feel like it's a good time to record about that because of what could be coming down the line overall with that.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely going to be coming down in the future. They're still doing a lot of research on it, but it's still an unknown territory.
Right. And we're definitely going to be jumping into that. And what else are we going to be covering here? Energy technology, maybe a little bit.
Yeah, go into that.
And something that's a little bit more current, a little bit more relevant that Drew can definitely, attest to. He's going to be covering pretty much the nature of his career line of work, not who he works for or anything like that. So that's all personal knowledge, but has to do with workplace safety, OSHA.
Yes.
OSHA mandates.
The lovely Biden mandate. Yes.
Yes, the lovely Biden mandate. We're gonna be covering a little bit of that, and also to some of the current court rulings or hearings that's going on in the Supreme Court related to that, as well as what was the other thing you had mentioned to me that was really interesting.
Oh, I mean, we can go into, if you want to go into the semiconductor chip issue.
Yes,
I can definitely talk a little bit about that.
You know what? I think that's where we should start off. So as many of you know, the semiconductor shortage that we've been having, or the chip shortage as it's commonly referred to, that we've been having with between cars, which is probably the most effective way that a lot of people have been dealing with, and a lot of electronics and whatnot. Listen, there's been a shortage of everything. Just this past week, actually, my wife went to go grocery shopping, and she couldn't find chicken. And my mother-in-law couldn't find chicken, and a bunch of people couldn't find chicken. Now, we all live in like different areas, pretty far away from each other and whatnot. And it was just like, I'm like, oh, okay, there's a chicken shortage. Here we go. So it begins. But yeah, let's cover the shortage of chips. What's going on?
Oh,
what can you tell me about this?
It's what I can and what I can't speak of.
Well, don't get yourself in trouble.
I'm not going to get myself in trouble.
Nah, don't do that.
I will keep quiet on that aspect. But no, directly, Mike's industry and where I'm working currently. Mm-hmm. It's just the fact of it's the supply and demand thing.
Right. Also, too, real quick, I'm sorry, not to cut you off. You want to share with people kind of like what your educational background is and whatnot, so give a little credence to this conversation, if you will.
Sure. So as Mike Brown has just mentioned, I am one of the few college educated friends that he has.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a curse or a privilege, but I do have a degree in chemical engineering. I've been doing health safety type of work for going on like 12 years now.
Yeah, it's been a while. You've kind of made your little niche on that.
Yeah, I've stuck with that. It's nice though, because you get to see a whole different, in my experience, I've gotten to see so many different aspects, places of employment, different environments. Right. So you get to encounter a lot of different people. You get to see what's going on firsthand. But yeah, I mean, currently now I'm in that industry with the chips. Again, can't say where I'm working, obviously.
Right.
But yeah, it just comes down to the fact that it's basically all down to supply and demand. The big thing was obviously when this whole illness, or I'll use it, illness, came into effect, a lot of places shut down. And what had happened was,
and you've had to deal with that too because of who you're working with, and you're a safety guy, you know, you got to know that stuff
every day.
Right.
It doesn't end. Unfortunately, I'm so sick of hearing it, but it doesn't end. It's not going to end as much as people want it to end. It's not going
we're
away
all hoping
anytime
for that.
soon. Yeah, but essentially, when the whole illness came down, everybody went into panic. We all had our mass shutdowns. And, you know, you have companies out there that need those products. And the big issue is because it was coming down the pipeline that everything was getting shut down, these massive corporations, I mean, I don't know if I can put names out there, but stuff that I've researched, they put in mass orders for these chips. Right. And there's a lot that goes into manufacturing them. You know, we were talking before, 92% of this entire production of these chips comes out of one place.
Taiwan, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the big battle.
Right.
So you think about it, it's 92% of everything that you have in that industry comes from one place. And then you get into, well, who's going to take that over? Right. So you get into the battle with like the US and China, obviously. You know, put it this way.
Yeah, there was the tariff wars that Trump was starting up, and it's not to go too far deep into that, but I found it interesting that all of this illness started off and it was right after there was a settlement with the whole tariff and whatnot, and all of a sudden it kicks off, and where does it come from? But that's very conspiratorial, and today we're not getting too conspiratorial.
No, we're not. No, we're getting into literal and factual of what's going on, just because of the fact that, you know, if this battle that's going on right now is basically the U.S. wants to start mass producing their own material in the country. Yeah, and
it definitely needs to have more of that.
They do, but the problem is that the capabilities to manufacture come down to a lot of different raw materials, and the issue is that Taiwan has it down packed. Right. So they have factories there, or fabs as they call them, fabrication plants that make all these materials. They basically get the baseline of what these massive corporations need. And because of all these shutdowns, you're going to get, when everything got shut down, you have now a backlog of orders. So you think of, like, say a company is freaking out with the shutdown that they need all these materials to make their own product. They're like, all right, well, I want 50 million of them.
Yeah. And they're able to pump it out.
Yeah, and they'll pump it out. But the problem is that now one company wants 50 million. Well, that's company A. Company B needs...
Everybody's trying to hoard.
Yeah, they're trying to get as much as they can.
Sure.
And then you run into issue with, like, you or I, where, you know, take every day, like you said, the car. Right. If somebody happens to lose their car key, for instance, and you got a chip in there.
Yeah, you were telling me about this.
Good luck. Yeah. That's all I'm going to say. Good luck. You're waiting, like, anywhere. I've heard people wait for 2 weeks for a new key. I've heard people wait 2 months for a new key.
That's crazy.
Just because there's just a shortage everywhere. But the fact is that there's this battle going on where if, let's say, if China, Beijing, capital, takes over Taiwan and says, okay, that's ours, we're screwed.
Well, and see, that's another thing too that it's like I've been very like aware of. So it's like, as you know, I'm in the import export business as my day job, and I've been like keenly aware of this stuff. And on top of which, it's almost like dude, I told you when all this kicked off, I'm like, bro, there's going to be shortages of a lot of different things. It's a trickle down effect. We're seeing it now, but it's actually going to hit us way later. The fact of the matter is, here we are now, almost 2 years in, and it's really affecting us. But with the materials, for example, like to produce some of these semiconductors, some of these chips, you're getting it from all over the world, right? Like, obviously, there's a pipeline, if you will, that flows right into Taiwan because they have that infrastructure all set up. So it's like here for the U.S., you know, we're having, I heard that, I don't know if it's Musk or whoever was pushing for Austin, Texas to be like the next, I guess, Taipei, which would be like the capital of Taiwan in terms of producing chips, right?
Yeah, I mean, for some reason, I don't know what his,
Well, he wants to put a chip in your head.
well, he wants to do a lot of things, but he moved his operations from California, which, you know, Silicon Valley.
Right.
Everyone knows Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
That's the tech hub. Well, now all of a sudden it's like, all right, well, we're going to leave Silicon Valley and we're going to go to Texas.
Right.
Like, why?
Well, incentives.
Who
sure.
knows? I mean,
Yeah.
you have you potentially could have the pipeline of getting more materials in Texas. I don't know the ins and outs of that.
Yeah.
But it just comes down to, you know, I've had cases where I can't get plastic drums.
Right. That's insane.
Like 55-gallon plastic drums. I've been getting, you know, vendors and stuff that I deal with.
Right.
They're telling me that there's a shortage. We don't have a supply. I was like, how do you not have a 55-gallon plastic drum?
That's so absurd. It's something as simple as like what we use every day, and it's like, oh, the shelves are bare and whatnot. And like a lot of people want to blame the current presidency administration for a lot of the woes in that aspect, but in reality, it's fallout from the overall pandemic.
It could be, but you have to take into account also that there's got to be some type of agenda in the back burner, because.
So what do you think the agenda is?
Think of everything now. Like, and I listened to your last podcast,
right?
And, you know, Ant made a valid point.
We were all geniuses on that podcast.
Yeah, for sure.
And you need to watch what you say, because they all know you and you know them.
I know, but that's fine. I'm not going to say anything bad, but, Ant made a valid point. You know, you get a raise, right?
Right.
But the inflation rate right now is through the roof.
Yeah. So what is it?
So it's putting more money in the pockets of the people who get more. So, all right, if I know, it's a perfect example. If I know you need something from me,
right,
and I can withhold it to the point where you can't take it anymore,
right,
and you will be willing to pay whatever you need to pay to get it, you're gonna do it. So it's like they're padding their pockets in a way. You can't tell me, like, you're in the transport industry,
right?
You can't tell me that the ports can't take in all those ships that are just sitting out there.
Well, see, and so I've mentioned this before on the audio podcast. For those watching on YouTube, go back and check that out. I want to say it was episode 4. It might have been episode 4, episode 3. I cover this in more in depth as it was happening live. So you had what was going on in California and Long Beach, right? So Long Beach is the biggest port that we have here in the United States. It is by far very, very big. So where we live here on the Northeast, it would be New York, New Jersey would be second. But that always goes back and forth with, believe it or not, Chicago, which is really interesting.
And Jacksonville, too. Jacksonville is supposed to be
not as big.
No?
Third biggest, that's always battling with Jacksonville, third and fourth. Not Jacksonville, Tampa, excuse me, is Houston. So Houston's a very big port. But back to on the West Coast, what was going on was it was a number of factors. So there was obviously a backlog. There was a lot of workers, a lot of dock workers, a lot of longshoremen catching COVID, and they're partially automated over there on the West Coast, which is, in my perspective, a bit of a problem. But that's neither here nor there. But so what was happening is there was issues with them getting cargo in, the piers filling up, literally the piers filling up with containers, and they would have nowhere to offload these ships to put it on the pier to then take it on the trucks. So they were blaming the truck drivers. Now, the truck drivers can't be fully blamed because the problem is regulation.
Yeah.
And in California, you have that emission regulation where you literally can't have a truck that's older than, I want to say it's like 3 or 5 years old. If it doesn't meet the emission standard, you can't even pull into the pier.
Yeah.
Right? Let alone be on the highway, which is a whole nother thing in itself. How they could have easily fixed it like that is, all right, guys, whatever you got, we're putting a moratorium on any emission issues that you may have on your trucks. Bring them on in. Let's get this pumping out, right?
Yeah.
As fast as possible. And the other thing that drove me crazy, too, is when Biden said, oh, they're working 7 days a week, around the clock, 24 hours. Newsflash, it's been happening since the beginning of the pandemic.
Why?
You know, and it's just like, dude, you're not fooling anybody in that industry when it comes to that. So how about, for example, Gavin Newsom? Okay, you contact him and say, hey, listen, put a moratorium on as emergency use put a moratorium on anything emission based. Let these guys from outside of the state, because a lot of guys outside of the state can come in. A lot of these long haul truckers from like Nevada or even Washington, wherever the hell they're coming from. Okay, Arizona, come help out, right? And what does he choose to do? None of that. So now we're suffering the consequences of that, and on top of which, the price of containers they're not as high as they once were. But to give you perspective, prior to 2020 or prior to the pandemic, I just say 2020 because it really started back in January and then started creeping up from 2020 on through to today. But prior to that, in a normal market, you were looking at somewhere around $4,000, $5,000 to ship a container worldwide. Yeah. Or not necessarily worldwide, but from China to the West Coast. Okay, and same thing for the East Coast overall, right? Or if it's coming from Europe, whatever it is, it's a little cheaper. At one point, you were looking at $22,000 to ship one container. So you don't think insane. That, right? Compound that with the overall, how should I put this? With just adding in the factor that you can't get this cargo moving. Right. And this plays in, again, it's all pipeline, right? Everything manufactured is built on the standard that Toyota developed, which I'm sure you know about, of on-time manufacturing. Yeah. Right. So are you aware? Like, you know about that, right?
A little bit, I do.
Yeah. You want to.
It's just the fact that, like, even the manufacturing aspect of things is like there's certain scheduling and timeline to get something done. But the issue is also if you don't have what you need, you're never going to meet that criteria.
Right. Right.
And that's a lot of about what's going on now. You know, my industry that I'm in, if something is off by, I mean, a small scale, I mean, you're talking at like a micron level scale.
Right. It's disastrous.
It's not even disastrous. It just won't work.
Right.
You know, this thing has to be perfect. And if you don't have the material or whatever you need to get that done and make it work right, it's at a loss. Right. You're not going to meet anything. So this whole situation, it's going to be backlogged, like you said, and it's not only in my industry; it's every industry. We're going to be backlogged probably until the next year.
Right. That's what I've been reading a lot about too.
They're saying it's not going to be normalized or stable until last thing I read was like Q2 of 2023 or something like that.
Good Lord.
So you think about
it's more than a year away.
Yeah, and they're already planning like for all these issues with, you know, the cost of everything that's being manufactured and getting done, and everybody wants certain products. It's just gonna escalate in cost of everything. You know? Right. I wish I could, but I can't divulge how much, you know, these things cost. Right. Because if you heard the number, you'd be out of your freaking mind.
These are not regular person numbers.
Nah, not a chance. Right. Not a chance.
Right.
You know, and the amount of work that goes in, the amount of, you know, technical expertise, how things work, you know, what you need. You know, you're talking about making something at such a small scale, and it's only going to get smaller.
Speaking of small scales,
which you're getting into the whole nanotech.
Yes, thing. Yes. Let's segue into that. That's some fascinating stuff right there.
Yeah, the nanotech aspect of things is,
first of all, what is nanoscale, right? What are we talking here?
You're going nanoscale is something that like the 1/1000th of a meter.
Right. So for comparison,
let's see. All right. So an atom.
Okay.
Everyone knows what an atom is. An atom is 0.1 nanometer in size.
Okay.
Okay. Nanotech, you're going from 1 nanometer to 100 nanometers. That's nanotech in that area.
In that
spectrum. So anything in that range is classified as nanotechnology.
And lower than that is like what, pico, right?
Yeah, pico is like 10 to the negative 12.
Oh, okay. Those are numbers I can't calculate.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I was never good at math. Otherwise, I'd gone to college as well. Colleague.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for that. You know, at least the money I dished out is actually helpful in this case.
You're one of the few that are actually not in debt for going to college.
No, thank God.
Yeah,
that's a blessing. But you know, it's going to be an interesting space. Not a lot of people know about it, and the big problem is relating into like my industry. Things are going to get smaller.
Right.
You know, you got phones, for Christ's sake, that bend.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Nanotech.
Yeah.
You know,
that's what it is.
It's bendable. It's bendable technology. It's being able to get to something to that small of a level,
right?
To where you can manipulate.
Can you bring the mic closer to you?
Oops, sorry about that.
No, that's all right.
Better?
That's better. Yeah.
Sorry about that. So you're getting to the point where you're altering things at that small scale, and it's also affecting the properties of those materials.
Yeah.
You know, you mentioned earlier like graphene.
Right.
Like, I don't know too much about graphene. I know a little bit, but you know, you're talking about, let's see, what graphene was 2004.
2004 it was discovered, yeah, by two gentlemen out of I think Manchester,
England.
It
was Andre Gaiman.
Yeah, let me pull that up.
Guy's name.
Hold on, let me just pull that up here. So discoverers.
Yeah, the two guys that got the patent or the Nobel Prize. I mean,
there we go. Not graphite, graphene. So, yeah, it was the University of Manchester, and it was. Hold on 1 second here. Sorry, I should have had this pulled up. Here we go. Nozelov.
Yeah, Kostya
Novoselov.
Yeah, so I mean,
yeah, they won Nobel Prize for this in physics.
2010.
Wow.
It's just because of the properties it has. I mean, that's straight up nanotech.
Yeah, 2004. Yeah.
That's the key nanotech. You're talking about this material that, you know, everyone is hyped up about,
right? And
going into like how the properties it has.
So what is graphene as far as you know?
It's a carbon allotrope. So it's just like
layman's man.
It's allotrope. Okay, sorry for the engineering talk, but an allotrope is just a different physical state.
Okay.
So, you know, carbon, right? Carbon is graphite. It's carbon itself, and it's diamond.
Right.
So graphene is just another state of it. But the funny thing is how these guys figured this out is
because they put it in like a honeycomb, right?
Well, that's the structure of it. So,
right.
But how they figured it out was they literally took a piece of graphite,
right,
and stuck a piece of tape to it. That's
so crazy. So it's like literally the stuff you get in a pencil, like a number 2 pencil, in like a disc form, let's say.
Yeah.
And they took a piece of Scotch tape,
taped onto a block of graphite,
right,
peeled it off, and then what they did is, I think I looked into it a little bit, they actually took that piece of tape, somehow dissolved the tape off to leave the graphene, and
well, you burn it off.
It's just a sheet,
right? So
yeah, it should be able to, because supposedly this thing is like,
because carbon will stay behind.
It should.
Yeah.
But then you get it into like a sheet form, and you got something where it's like the first 2D material that is known to exist.
Which is crazy, because we were talking about this earlier off air, and you had mentioned it's 2D, and I'm like, well, like that's crazy to think about, because it's like you never give it much thought, but everything's in 3 dimensions because we live in a 3-dimension. You know.
Except for that.
So it's almost like, instead of going like, let's go to the 4th dimension, you know what I mean, like time, it's like, no, it's like we're gonna downplay it, and it's like, so it's flat.
It's literally flat. It's 1 atom thick, and it looks like, you ever seen chicken wire?
Yeah, let me see if I can pull that up. Yeah, that's
it. Literally looks like chicken wire.
Right.
But it's, oh man, I had the number before. I think it's like 3 or 4 times stronger than Kevlar, if not more.
Yeah, so the properties of it, so here we go. It's funny, it says graphene is an allotrope of carbon. And yeah, I still don't have a screen recorder. Sorry about that, been a little busy. So yeah, it's a honeycomb lattice nanostructure that is named for graphite, and the suffix of "ene" reflects the graphite allotrope of the carbons contained in numerous double bonds, which just means that it's connected from multiple sides, right?
Yeah. So you just have double bonds, and they're stronger than normal, so that way they have all these crazy properties, like they're good with heat, electricity especially. So now everyone's going haywire.
It has like a number of different use cases, right? So it's like all the way from using it as a structure to using it for creating batteries to creating what were we talking about, the ultra capacitors?
Yeah, it does,
which is pretty much just like kind of like a battery in itself. Just
it's able to hold. It has high electrical conductivity, and it's gonna be what everyone's talking about. Is it's gonna replace existing batteries, all this other fun stuff. But the problem with that is, if you have something that's good, that works,
Right.
right? Nobody's gonna say, all right, we have a new material.
Right.
This is better.
But it could change the world. But
Can it?
I think it can. It's
How?
just a matter. What do you mean?
How can it change it?
Well, think about it like this, right? If you use graphene and its properties for electrical conductivity, which supposedly it's the best electrical conductor that we've ever discovered, even though technically it's man-made, but like, so if you take that and you apply it to like batteries or use it as a battery, as some sort of capacitor like that, the discharge and charge rate on them, from my understanding, is something insane. It's extraordinary for it to go back and forth. So you have that application. You have the application of creating the carbon nanotube, so you can create some sort of like wire or rope or some wire would probably be more accurate to say, and you can run that from here to space and create a space elevator. That's a little extreme.
Space elevator, okay.
Yeah, because you
brought that up.
I'm a big nerd when it comes to space stuff.
Yeah.
So that's really freaking cool.
But that's the problem, though, is the fact that you have something that's new, that's not really proven. There's people that are trying to prove something, but if something works, it's not. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
Yeah.
Unless you can truly prove that this thing is that much better than what we have.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to go for it because it's going to cost a fortune for somebody to change
See,
this.
that's the other thing too, right? That I got brought attention to was the fact that manufacturing, if you're able to manufacture it for costly, because it's too costly right now, right? That's the major issue with it, is that if you're able to make it cheaper and manufacture it cheaper than, say, steel, right, or at the price of steel, well, why wouldn't you use something that has far better properties than steel or even titanium or what? Because, I mean, think about it. You can replace titanium, which is super expensive, but you can create graphene.
You can.
You can't necessarily create titanium. You have to mine it. Same thing with steel.
And then you have the chemical process to make it. But, I mean, that's the thing, though. It's the fact that to get to that level, which that's why, like, this and other nanotech hasn't reached its peak yet. Right. The problem is it's great.
It'll be old men by the time it reaches its real use cases.
That's what I'm assuming also, but you never know. The problem is that that it's not taking off completely because of everything that's needed to get to that point. Right. It's not cheap to do now. Right. And the problem is, this whole mantra that people have, it's environmentally friendly. You know what I do. Yeah. Health, safety, and environmental stuff. I have to deal with that stuff.
Yeah, what do you think of the drawbacks to it? Because that's something, like, I don't mean to cut you off, but that's one of the things that we spoke about earlier is, like, we get new technology all the time, right? So you have plastics, wonder material when it came out in the 1930s, right? You said asbestos earlier, right? Yeah. I mean, look how harmful that is. It causes what you were telling me about before, which I had some idea about, mesothelioma, right? Yeah. Very destructive to the body and the environment as a whole, right? So it's almost like it's shiny, it's new, we're all googly-eyed about it, but, like, what is the technological, like, backlash on this?
Well, it's the amount of cost and process to make it. That's the problem. Is when
it's
you
the fallout of that.
Exactly. So you want to be environmentally, everyone's all hyped on, go green, don't, stop pollution, this, that, and the third, but you have something new. You don't know what the backlash or fallout of that is, but the process to make it, a lot of this stuff needs heavy use of solvents, like really, like, volatile chemicals that
nasty stuff
you burn off, and where does it go? Right up to the greenhouse gas, all this other stuff,
or even water supply
runoff, things like that. So is the cost worth it? That's why they're a little, everything that I've looked into, they're saying that it is going to be the way of the future. It is. But it's just like you said, it's something shiny. It's exciting.
Yeah, everybody's like,
what's going to happen?
I got to see this.
You mentioned the whole thing with, like, the asbestos stuff. Like, asbestos, like, I had to work in that.
Is it asbestos or asbestos?
Asbestos, same crap. It's the same thing. It's, that's a natural mineral. That's not something that is man-made. You find it.
Right. Just harmful for the individual.
Yeah, but the thing is it's got all these fancy properties like graphene has.
Oh,
think about it.
All right. Well, you know better than me.
You work in car. You know about cars.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
All our friends know about cars.
Right.
You know mechanics that were working on cars from like the 50s, the 60s.
Yeah.
Yeah, changing the brakes.
Well, even brakes had asbestos in it. They used to put it in everything, right?
Yeah. The other thing, which was funny, which I learned just from like my experience in working in this like field. Mm-hmm. You ever seen those fancy women from like the 50s, 60s era that had that they smoked a cigarette,
right?
And they had that little pipe.
Yeah, like the 1920s.
Yeah, well, before that too. Yeah. Sorry, those 1920s and 30s. But yeah, so they don't get their hands smelling.
Right, like cigarettes.
Yeah, that was asbestos too. I mean, so you're breathing in stuff that
like it's not bad enough you're smoking.
It's bad enough you're smoking, but you're just making it worse. But this is the same thing. Like that's why we were talking, outside before. I was saying that this nanotech is potentially going to have the same effect. I mean, listen,
By the way, we're not hypocrites.
I'm not a hypocrite.
We were also smokers.
Yeah. I'm not a doctor.
Right.
So
this is not medical advice.
Take what I say with a grain of salt. But,
right.
This nanotechnology, you said nanotubes.
Right. Carbon nanotubes, yeah.
When you use it,
mm-hmm.
you're going to have some type of off gas of it, depending on what the use is for. Right. So if you use it for energy, you're going to have some of it that's going to burn off.
Yeah.
Unless you have a clean burn, you're going to have something that gets burned off.
Well, see, my understanding, too, is that, like, even in its natural state, so I had seen something along the lines where they were going to potentially use it as a, for desalinization to clean water. Supposedly it has, like, a really good property to do that. And when it does that, actually, in the process of doing that, now you can explain this a little better to me than I know. It actually does create a current within the membrane of the graphene. So like you're getting an electrical charge as it's cleaning, well, not cleaning, but like separating the sodium and the chloride from the water.
Well, that's what desalinization is, right?
Right.
You're removing the salt.
Yeah.
That's the problem with this stuff. So when you go into like a nanoscale,
right,
this has the capability to carry something with it.
Mm.
So let's take, for instance, like you just said. So the current you're seeing is probably, again, not an expert in this, but logically thinking, what it is it's pulling the salt out as it's getting screened, let's say,
mm-hmm.
and it's carrying the salt on the material.
Right.
So how this technology that they're talking about, like, oh, this is going to be great for drug therapy and medical purposes and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, I did see that too.
So that's the thing, is it can carry what it wants to through your body to the pinpoint location.
Right.
Right.
So it's good for, like, say, cancer treatment.
In theory.
Okay.
Because they can't prove that yet.
Right.
And they probably won't for quite some time. So anything at that scale, it has a great property, but it'll literally carry something you potentially don't want, which is one of the outfalls of this nanotech. Is nobody knows that what it's going to do when it's produced in mass production, right. What it's going to do,
the harmful effects that can happen in the environment,
people, to the
environment.
There's been cases where they've done tests and lab rats have gotten tumors. In other cases, the tumors went away.
Well, by the time this stuff is mainstream, it's not going to matter because
we'll be old and gray, or probably not here anymore. But
or a large majority of the human population probably won't be here. It's all going to be robots.
We're going on this again. Yeah, they're talking about potentially being able to make people bionic with this nanotech stuff.
Well, yeah, you download your brain in the metaverse.
Oh, here we go with the metaverse.
And then it's going to be, you're going to be walking around. So screw the environment, right? You know. You're gonna get what they call, like, you ever watch Altered Carbon?
No, I've never seen that
show. It's pretty good. It's based off a book. Highly recommended for anybody who hasn't checked it out. It's on Netflix. Season 1. Season 2 is a little Anthony Mackie, I like him, but it's overall the story didn't flow. But in any case, in this show, they have something called sleeves. So what it is, it's their bodies, right? People die, and then the reason why they're sleeves is because they can download their consciousness or their being into this, like, device that looks like a disc, and they put it in between one of the vertebrae in the back of your neck, and you can inhabit whatever body you want.
Oh, joy.
Right. So you can be dead, have your consciousness stored away, okay, and then come back to life like 100, 200 years later and just right back in. Another way they use it too is they take that information and they'll transfer it across vast distances. So in this universe, it's like, I think it's like 300-400 years in the future or whatever. They're able to transmit a person's consciousness across the stars to other planets.
Okay.
As opposed to physically traveling them, and boom, they're there.
No, this is definitely your wheelhouse.
Yeah. But
sure.
the point of what I'm getting at is like, it could reach the point like with all these wonder materials that we have and all these different technologies coming about and the whole metaverse talk and whatnot, which a lot of people are saying like, dude, it's like we're at the point where we're playing Pong, right?
Yeah.
The point where we're playing Grand Theft Auto or like Metal Gear Solid or whatever, like Call of Duty is like in the way future. Like we're going to be old gray men. I had mentioned this in the last episode, like, you know, in the 2080s and thereabout, which ties into like my theory that I'm coming up with.
Yeah. Your conspiracy theory.
My conspiracy theory.
Yep.
But the point of what I'm trying to get at is like, do we as humans overall, do we reach that point? Are we heading in that direction? Like, you know what I mean? Like, do we not have a choice? Can we just go out, live out in like in the middle of nowhere and just be left alone? Like, I don't know.
I wish.
You know?
No, I wish, because the way things are going, it's, you know, the metaverse talk, it's seeming more and more like it's eventually going to be the new reality.
Right.
And the way they're guiding all this research and tech and everything going, it's going to be plausible. Like, it could potentially happen. So, you know, the new argument, like we were discussing before, it's going to be, you know, with everything going on in the world, it's a crazy place given this whole, you know, do you want to take the Biden mandate or you don't want to take the Biden mandate? You're getting judged.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so I just think in the future it's going to be, you know, I think it's going to be, are things real, or are things like Sean had mentioned in his podcast, like a true simulation? Like that's what's going to be like. You're going to have realists versus the simulated world,
right?
And it's going to progress because that's the direction. For some reason, that's the way it's going.
So is that the new divide? Because that's something we kind of touched on in the last episode, was what's going to be the next divide. I'm like, I don't think that's going to be the next one, but I'm not going to really get into politics at this point.
Yeah, I'm not going to.
Not that heavily. We're going to cover the Biden mandate and all that.
Oh yeah, that's going to be a
fine jazz. But is the next overall separation maybe down the line when our children are our age? Is that going to be like, are the people living out in the field, or are you going to be hooked up to the matrix or the simulation or whatever you want to call it, right? That's
probably, in the way I think, that I could see that happening.
Right.
I legit could see that happening.
Right.
Because if you think about it now, it's 2022. You already have things out that are doing AI, virtual reality,
right,
that you can purchase. They're mass produced. So that's now.
Yeah.
What's to say what's going to happen down the line? It could hit that point where it's going to be, you're going to have people who are off the grid, which, speaking for myself, I would be one of those people.
Yeah, I'm on board. I'm there.
I don't need my phone. I don't need, listen, all this tech stuff is great. It's convenient.
Right.
It's also the devil. That's my opinion. And you're going to have those people who can't live without all this tech.
Right.
They don't know what they're going to do with themselves.
Yeah, that's and I think we've actually, from a societal standpoint, I think we've already reached out to where if you take away somebody's phone for a long period of time, some people are going to lose it, man. They're not going to know what to do. It's like some people are going to be like, oh wow, I forgot about going for walks. I forgot about self-reflecting. I forgot about, you know, all these like normal things that humans are supposed to do. Listen, this device right here, right? Like you said, it's the devil.
Yeah.
It's a double-edged sword.
Of course.
Okay.
Because you can't survive without it.
Right. But at the same time, too, you need it in order to function in a modern-day society. And it sucks. Well, I shouldn't say function in a modern-day society. You need it in order to stay up to date with the world around you. Because if not, there's that lag, there's that disconnect that people have.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So...
but that's the directions, like you said, that's where we're going, because like all this nanotech stuff that you had mentioned, that's where it's going.
Right.
What's gonna be next? Dude, you do have people who have smartwatches.
Right. There's already wearables.
You don't even need it. And the funny part is you're wearing nanotech on you and you don't even know it.
What?
Well, yeah, nanotech is in the smartwatch.
Tell
What do
me
you think
more.
the screen is made out of?
Oh, that's true.
What do you think water repellent coatings are?
Oh, yeah.
That's nanotech.
Yeah, manufactured. Yeah.
You got nanotech in sunscreen. You got nanotech in deodorants. You have typical everyday consumerist products. You have nanotech already.
Hold on. So you're telling me that it's possible, there's a strong possibility of this, that we could be getting some sort of nanotech technology, like legit, like bots potentially, like in different products, and we don't even know it.
Oh, you're going with the nanobots now. Yeah. I mean, it's already there. There's certain consumer products that already have, like, you ever seen a perfect example, the glass, you know, those self-cleaning windows?
Yeah.
Or the color changing ones?
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever seen those?
Yeah.
Nanotech.
BMW just came out. Yeah.
That's nanotech.
Oh, so that's how that happens?
Yeah, it changes you change the tint on the window.
Right.
How do you think that is? You think somebody is like comes in and all right? Like,
No, I understand that.
It's a film.
Right.
It's a thin film that you can't see that has the properties that'll change the tint.
Wow. So it's just, what is it? Just send a current, and all of a sudden it'll just switch over to that other property.
It'll change the tint. That's what I'm getting at with all this. That's the problem with this nanotech stuff is that you're going to this such small scale that you're affecting the established property of the material. So the minute you start working on something at almost the molecular level, which is what you're getting at, just because you're altering something there it's gonna change the existing property of the material. So it's just funny because things that you take for granted every day and you're around, you're already dealing with this stuff, and you don't even realize it. Like,
so I'm trying to pull up here is like what Drew's talking about is like this, because this is mind blowing, because this came out, I think it was CES. If it would ever load, you'd think I have decent internet. Anyway, it's the new BMW iX. Did you see this thing?
I didn't see it yet.
No, you didn't see this yet? Oh man, I really want it to load now. Hold on, let me see here. Let me try a different
this is the one where the car changes color. That's also nanotech.
Okay, hold on. Yeah, that's right. That's also nanotech. I mean, you want to stay muted? Thank you. Right. So here you have this thing literally changes color from black to white. Like, that's insane, bro.
Yeah.
That's so, like, look at this. First of all, here's my practical question about this. What do you register it as? What? Black or gray?
Confused? I don't know. I mean, it's like taking a car into like, what do I classify myself as these days? You know what I mean?
Special.
Yeah, from some people we know.
You can add stripes to this thing, so it's like you hit race mode, and all of a sudden, like the stripes pop up.
It's like a crazy fancy ceramic coating. Like you ceramic coat a car, right? It's water repellent, but
they call it e-ink, by the way.
Yeah.
So,
but I was watching something where I forgot the name of the company, but there's one company that was going, and this is going back to like the graphene because it's still part of nanotech stuff, but there was one company that can mass produce graphene. Like,
oh, are you talking about that Swedish company that made the darkest color of black?
It starts with like a V, I think. I can't remember the name. But I saw them. They had like a 30-gallon drum of graphene, and it weighed like 1.2 kilograms.
The darkest black. Yeah. Vanta black.
It's probably, it might be Vanta.
Yeah. So yeah, yes, Vanta black.
But they are trying to mass produce this material.
Oh no, that's where I'm pulling it up from. So let me see if I can pull it up. So like,
look, it says it right there. If you go back to
hold on,
that article, it says it right there. It's
MIT creates the darkest black. But you said there was a company that developed this, right?
There's a company. I was watching a video, and there was a company that is trying to mass produce graphene to put it into commercial and industrial use. So like I was telling you before, we were talking outside. They actually took raw graphene, mixed it with rubber, and it makes it more thermally resistant, and it increases the strength and flexibility.
So the longevity also of the
Yeah.
of the rubber, say for like tires or
Yeah.
something, right?
Yeah, so I mean, when you're going into like this was done in MIT based on what the article says, but look at the second statement: the coating, which is made from vertically aligned carbon nanotubes,
CNT, grown on a chlorine etched aluminum foil that can absorb 99.995% of visible light. Bro.
that's almost So,
Bro.
but you're going right there. It's carbon nanotubes, which is what graphene is. So it's being used.
I just want to say real quick, my college art professor said that it is impossible to paint black. Black does not exist. You'd have to, visibly suck out all the light. Well, newsflash, buddy, it's been 15 years, and here it is. So, wow, that's wild.
It's crazy. Like you don't read about this because there's still so much work going into this new tech, but you could see it's being used in front of your eyes.
That's so insane. So, like, I don't know if you guys can see this. I'm gonna zoom in and post potentially, bro. There's a diamond, right? Nice shiny diamond covered in this. I went back too far. It's first time using the internet.
It seems that way.
So you guys can definitely pull this up on YouTube as well. I've seen this where it's like they take the they take like a face mask, right? They take like a person's like face, they do like a paper mache like mask type of it, and then they have the one side that's just naturally white because of the color, and then the other side is the Vanta black, and you cannot make any of the contours out of the face.
Yeah.
Like literally they're shining a light directly on it, and they'll flip it to one side and it'll kind of shine back because of the white, and then they'll flip it around and it's like nothing. It's just dead void. It's like, I guess what you would say black hole really is, right? Because black hole sucks in all visible light.
Yeah, it absorbs all the light, but
Right.
I mean, you're getting to this is the thing I'm talking about, is that like there's so much stuff going on around you, but you don't realize that this stuff is already out.
And it's out there, bro.
Like,
It's wild.
you were just talking about it, right? With like the whole graphene stuff, you can fold it.
Right.
Okay. That device you picked up, your
Yeah.
phone,
Yeah.
how do you fold that? What do you think your screen is made out of?
Oh, I don't have the fancy phone.
Well, you don't have it, neither do I, because I don't, like, literally, that's just boggles my mind, but that's the capability of it. You're
Right.
going into, like, a nanotech scale right in front of your face.
Well,
But you don't realize it. And it's...
you think
only
it's more harmful or beneficial to us as a society? And I guess this is true not necessarily for just the nanotech part, but like technology as a whole as it's progressing.
It has its perks. I mean, I read somewhere that Airbus is trying to make a plane full out of graphene.
What? That'd be wild.
So the shell, and obviously since that graphene material has the capability to essentially charge itself,
Right.
it wouldn't need a fuel tank.
So
It wouldn't
if you
need
ran electric motors on this thing,
You wouldn't need motors. The whole thing would actually charge itself.
no, but you need some sort of propulsion, right?
You would need propulsion, but that comes from the initial energy boost. So when you're actually coasting,
Right.
remember, you're above the clouds when you're in a plane.
Yeah, but what's propelling it though? Like
The motors will,
well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
but the motors would get the fuel
from
the material.
naturally moving,
from the material,
right?
because it's absorbing,
As it's naturally just
going.
Yeah. So like, what if, say for example, right? I got a crazy idea, and you're probably gonna maybe steal this because it's so wonky. You just keep the plane moving the whole time because it could do it, and then you just latch on like a hook, and you got a vest, and it's just like, all right, guys, I'll see you later.
Yeah, right.
Or like Joe says, ah.
Yeah, exactly. That's Joe to a T.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, it has its perks. It's gonna be the wave of the future. It's gonna be something that we're gonna have to deal with.
Ready? The future.
Oh God, yeah, the future. But it's gonna be one of those things where we're already around it. It's present in our everyday, but you just don't realize it.
Right.
And unless you really dig in and see. But
Dude, I want a knife out of this stuff. Like, I want to make a knife.
shit.
Like, just have a knife, like, super thin. Like, you turn it sideways, you can see it, and then you turn it, like, short ways, and it's like, where'd it go?
Dude, it's paper. This stuff is crazy. Like,
Well, you said it's an atom thick, right?
it is. It's a full sheet, but like when you look at this stuff, it's crazy. Like, I was doing some research on it just because of the fact that like it's a reality. You just saw like that Vanta black is carbon nanotubes, which hello.
So hear me out here, right? I'm not gonna get conspiratorial, but just hear me out.
Okay.
Right. So what if the way you fix global warming, right? Because global warming is caused by what? Too much carbon emissions.
Yeah.
What if you're able to suck carbon emissions out of the sky, right? Collect it, and then use it to create graphene, which in turn you can use it for power production, right? But you don't necessarily have to reuse any material. You can now save the environment, pull the carbon out of the sky, and use it for graphene, or pump it back into the ground, whatever the case is. Did you hear about this stuff?
I heard about it a little bit, but my question or my comment to that statement you just made is it's valid because that's what they're shooting for. They're saying,
okay, so this is a thing.
We're going to use nanotech to clean up the environment. Well, that's all fine and dandy, but the problem is okay, for me to make the stuff to clean up the environment,
right,
and protect people,
right,
I'm making it actually worse.
Bro.
Because I have to make it worse to make what I need to make it better.
Yo. Yeah.
So think about the logic in that. So it doesn't make sense. That's how everything is, though.
But that's the thing. There's no
good way or easy way to
ethical.
It's not really.
It should be ethical.
Yeah.
Ethical design, I think, should be a bigger part of engineering.
It would be. Yeah, you're getting into that part now. That's lovely.
Well, let's take a quick break and then we'll jump back into that. Yeah. All right. All right. So we were just talking about the ethical, I guess, overall design, if you will, of designing, engineering, things like that. If you what do you think about it? You know what I mean? Like, because obviously it's like we were talking earlier, like there's good and bad things that can come from technology, uses of technology, but it's like it's always that shiny new product. It's like, ooh, we gotta use it. All of a sudden, next thing you know, it's destroying people, the environment, whatever the case is. Like, what's your take on that? Being that you do have like an engineering background,
it's hard to say.
Right.
Everybody wants to be ethical. Unfortunately, the definition of being ethical is kind of open for interpretation. So it's kind of like, in my case, I have the duty, just because of some of the certifications that I have, I have the duty to be ethical in what I do. So if I don't know something about a certain subject matter, then technically speaking, I'm not supposed to talk about it or discuss it or practice it without somebody higher up. But the thing is that everything is moving at such a fast pace.
Right.
That, in my opinion, sometimes I feel as though the ethical aspect of it is kind of left in the back burner until after the fact. So if you think about it, like, so many things have come up and come out where, all right, we're going to do it now, but the ramifications of it are coming down the pipeline.
Right.
So it's
given the some of the things that we're talking about technology wise, like with the nanomaterials and the metamaterials and the graphene and all that other all that other fine jazz, do you think it's like you think there'll be new conditions developed or something like that? I mean, I the way I look at it is like you brought up mesothelioma tied to asbestos, right?
Yeah. And
asbestos is a naturally occurring material. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a mineral.
It's a mineral. Oh, so yes, I'm sorry, a mineral. So, and I mean, you got to figure like the baseline behind graphene is carbon, right?
Yeah.
So it's like carbon exists everywhere. We're made of carbon. Like Carl Sagan once said, we're made of stardust, right? You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, it's a matter of it's the balance, it's the scale.
Okay.
Is it better for us, or are we worse off with it versus without it? Or is it just overall that hubris that humanity tends to have of if we can do it, then we should. Whereas it's supposed to be like, should we do it because we can, or should we not do it because it might be harmful?
see, that's the tough part of it.
Right.
You don't know.
Right.
Nobody knows. The problem that I see with the way things are going with this new tech age is that the capabilities this stuff has, it's highly probable that you're going to carry something along with it
Right.
into your body, and it can have like a detrimental effect. It all just depends, like, what is it? So you know how we were talking about the use of this tech for drugs and like treatment. So yeah, you can target certain things. They're still working on that, but like we were talking about the nanobots thing,
Right.
and it's like, all right, we're gonna put a nanobot in you. It's gonna target a cell.
Cancer cell, let's say.
For instance, like a cancer cell, and it's gonna send the treatment directly to that cell. But what else is it gonna send? Like, what else is gonna be carrying? Like, it's gonna be carried in that.
Right.
Can it stay there long enough to do the treatment? This is all stuff that nobody really knows, and it's all a guessing game. So, you know, I tied in the whole mesothelioma thing, which, yeah, I know that's a boring subject, but unfortunately, you see it now. It's a fact. Like, you see,
Yeah, people have been suffering it for years.
you see commercials of it, like,
yeah.
if you've been exposed, you know, call so and so. It's
Right.
like law firms trying to make a quick buck off of the stuff.
Yeah, of course, because they have a class action lawsuit or something.
Of
like
course,
that. Yeah.
and it's a real thing. You know, I'm not going to take anything away from it. It is a real thing, but you know, all that stuff is with the hazard of what originally was tied to it. With this, the whole asbestos thing is that fiber is so durable. It's indestructible. It has all these great qualities. But if you get it in your lungs, it'll actually keep penetrating through your lung, and it'll hit the lining, and that's what mesothelioma is. It's a cancer, let's say, or it's developing of a fluid around the lining of your organ.
Right.
It sounds similar though, right? If you think about it, it's great at thermal conductivity. It's good with electricity. It's good with this. It's durable. It's strong. So is a carbon nanotube.
Right, which is interesting because like even another like quote unquote wonder material that we've had in the past that, like, you know, came from 1930s. I mentioned it earlier, was plastics, for example. Right, plastics are huge. I mean, think about all the things that we have in our daily lives that have plastics, right? All the way from the bottle and whatnot. But it's been shown that plastics have gotten so deep into us overall as human beings and within our bodies and whatnot that it is affecting our overall reproductiveness. Like Joe Rogan had I forget the lady's name. She was some sort of doctor, and she was studying this, and she had been studying this as kind of like her life's work, and she found the connection between plastics being broken down into people's system and your overall, I know this is going to be funny, your taint.
Yeah,
Measuring your taint from what it used to be to what it currently is, and how overall, like, you know, whether it's sperm reproduction or just overall like human anatomy, genitals wise, and how that's affecting like the overall birth rate throughout the world.
yeah,
You know, and plastics have made it into our water, and we can't really filter it out all the way. No matter what we do, we cannot fully filter it out. And it's kind of gone to, or even like in the oceans and whatnot, like there's been fish, we eat fish, for example, that have plastic particles inside of their overall meat.
Yeah.
And we don't even realize it. So we're constantly digesting it, and the body can't really filter it out. So it stays within the body. You know what I mean? Now, mind you, that's like, you know, there's the whole BPA thing, right, that you're familiar with, right? And so what I'm getting at with this overall is we don't know what the opposite end of having these kind of technologies hit society are really going to be.
And we're not going to know until things start happening. If you look at it, like you mentioned plastics, right? Think of the way I see things just because of the industry and my career that I'm in. There's a statement that I forgot who his name was. He was like a founder of like toxicology, which is like anything that can affect you. Yeah. I think it was Paracelsus or something like that. I think his name was. He said something really straightforward. The dose makes the poison. Anything can kill you.
Right.
Anything.
Even water, right?
Yeah. I mean, you had the case where what was that? That woman was trying to win a contest to get like a Wii for her kid. It was like, how much water can you drink without going to the bathroom? She drowned. She drowned internally.
You can drown by drinking too much water,
and you don't get rid of it. So everything there's a certain limit that you can have something,
right?
And before it'll have an adverse effect on you. So unfortunately, with this new age, nobody really knows what that is, and they're not gonna know until they get more research that's coming down the line. But you think of it like you said, plastics. What happens when you burn plastic?
Yeah, it goes right into the atmosphere.
Yeah, but it can also send something into, I think it generates something called like PCBs, polyvinyl or polychlorinated biphenyls or something like that. It's called PCBs. It's like you burn it, and that's that burning, nasty smell of plastic.
Right.
That can adversely affect you. Anything in this world can kill you. It just depends on how much.
How much it is, right?
You know, like, all right, what you do you weld?
Yeah, of course.
Do you weld stainless?
No, I didn't. I personally do not, but yeah.
Okay, but somebody that welds stainless, right? You weld stainless steel. Oh, it's just welding. Well, yeah, but if I was to tell you that you're welding stainless steel and what you're releasing when you're welding is something that could cause cancer,
right?
If you're exposed to it for too much, you know, you don't think about it because it's your everyday routine. You get so formalized with it. But the fact is until you get enough of a knowledge base into what this stuff can or cannot do, you don't know. Ethically, you don't know if it's ethical or it's unethical. Everybody wants bigger and better. They want, or in this case with nanotech, they want smaller and better. But you want to have something that's going to improve your everyday life. It's going to make things better, but at what cost?
Well, it's cost-benefit analysis, right?
In a sense, yeah. But the fact is that there's no information on the back ends to determine what that cost-benefit analysis is yet, because this stuff
there's no study.
There's nothing.
Right. There's no case use. There's no study of it.
Know, everything that people put out there is all it's all hypothetical. It's, you know, oh, this could or this may. It's not, and those words are key words you want to look at, because it's like could or may is I'm not really sure. It's kind of like, I don't know.
Let me ask you this: is our own ingenuity, is our own creativity as humans, as Homo sapiens, do you think that might be the ultimate, like, end all be all, and our way of how should I put this, of killing ourselves off, of extinction? You know what I mean? Do you think that that's a strong possibility? Do you think that we're already there? Do you think that we're heading there? Like, you know, it's not easy questions.
It's not. It's a double-edged sword, because it's like I said, everybody always wants. Like, I went into engineering. Like, I went to chemical engineering. So
yeah, what brought you into that?
That was interesting. So I actually pursued it because of my high school. I'm gonna sound really nerdy right now. My high school AP chemistry teacher.
Okay.
Yes, I was one of those clowns that was taking college classes in high school, but whatever. She was a chemical engineer, and I kind of got into it because the basis of engineering is taking something that exists and trying to make it better.
Right.
But I'm more on the chemical side of things. Like, I was one of those people that actually liked chemistry. So I have to take and use that now, which is a blessing, because, you know, again, I went and suffered through the system for 4 years to get the second most expensive piece of paper I'll ever own in my life.
Why? What was the first?
My mortgage. Duh. The mortgage is number one.
Fair enough.
It's you know, mortgage, college degree. That's it. But it's, you know, I'm able to use that and incorporate it to what I do, and I can relate to these current events based on what's being done around the world. So do I see this exploration, I'll call it, of seeing how far we could take this tech and this direction?
Right.
You don't know if it's going to be the end all be all, because there's no real answer to it yet until you see what the final products are. everything is still a guessing game. You don't really know because everyone's freaking out like this whole with the graphene thing. Oh, it's in you. Well, yeah. I mean,
yeah. I get what you're saying.
Is it or isn't it? But you don't know. But the thing is you build up. So the more you're taking in, you don't.
So real quick, right? Are you familiar with tribalism, right? Like humanity, tribalism, like how we have biases towards things.
Yeah.
In particular, whether it's one thing or another, whatever it may be, right? So could it be that our prowess for engineering and things like that could be that maybe a leftover product of our overall survival in humanity? Like, take back like the hunter-gatherer days, right? Like we had to worry about wild animals. So it's like, well, what's a better way of protecting ourselves, or what's a better way of hunting for our meat or protein, however you want to consider it. Could it be that now as modern day humans that we are continually having that overall ability to engineer and recreate, or I shouldn't say recreate, but engineer and progress forward and bettering our overall livelihoods, right? Because it's naturally ingrained within us, much like how tribalism is, but it's not something that we necessarily, actually, I shouldn't say necessarily, we don't see it. We are seeing it a lot more in today's daily lives between, like the whole vax thing, and so on and so forth, left, right,
all that fun stuff.
the whole racial thing, all that stuff. So a lot more people are becoming more aware of tribalism today than perhaps maybe like 20 years ago, on a societal overall point of view. So is it possible that our overall prowess in engineering and development and progression of technology is just a byproduct of having that within us as humans, much like exploration, right? Which is something like, granted, by the way, it should be noted that Drew is also Portuguese, so he has...
Oh, here we go.
No. Typically, okay, so our people, historically have been known as explorers, amongst other things. But mainly historically we've been known as explorers. Like, we led development towards exploring into the new world, Vikings not included, but overall we kind of brought that into the mainstream and made it possible with engineering as well as some sciences and whatnot and so forth. So we're more keen to discovery, I think, overall, right? So not to kind of put it that way, but is it that is just a byproduct overall of us trying to better ourselves, or is it just a natural instinct and ultimately it goes too far because the scales get weighed more in one direction because we have to do this? We don't always understand why, and then it leads us to the overall ethical side of things. It's like, oh shit, we messed up.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So to answer your question, I think it used to be to better ourselves. If you look in the example that you said, like take the hunter for instance. Right. Before, what did they used to use to hunt? A bow and arrow. Right. Then what came out? A gun.
Well, many years later, but
you see the progression. It's to make it easier, more efficient, but it's for the betterment of the person.
Correct.
And society as a whole.
Right. I was gonna say, or of the people.
Yeah. These days, the way I see it is, all right, who can be the first one to come up with this so I could put another $1 in my pocket?
Yeah, and that's why.
And forget what happens to anybody.
Right. That's also another issue too. That's comfort.
Yeah, but I wouldn't even say comfort because, to be honest, you're living in it now.
Right.
It's who can come. What's the race going on now? If you think ethically, what's the race going on? It's the U.S. and China, right?
Right.
It's who can come up with the best
technology
or anything first.
Well, supposedly the Chinese are ahead of the curve when it comes to quantum computing.
Well, the Chinese.
That's a whole nother can of worms.
Yeah, I'm not even going to touch that subject. But it's the fact is it used to be to, and it's like why I went into what I went to study for. It's you want to take something existing,
right,
and try to improve it to make it better to make it more efficient, to make it more helpful, useful for society as a whole.
It's a problem solving thing.
Exact. That's all engineering is.
Right.
It's all right. You have a base to use. How can I build off of that and make it better? Right. But now it comes down to it's all right. Let me make a base out of something. Let me take something as a starting point. Let me develop it, and let me go off the wall right now with what I'm trying to accomplish. Because I know if I get there first, I have everybody else by the balls.
Right.
You want that?
Figuratively speaking.
Yeah, you're gonna have to pay me. You want that? It's gonna be. It's more of a financial aspect of things now versus an ethical thing. So they don't. There's no real care, in all honesty, to see what happens to people. That's why you hear all this stuff. Like, we're surrounded by it now just because
it's greed.
It's greed, and it's the fact that it's you're seeing it now. It's the whole vax versus unvax thing, right?
Right.
It's like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, in a way.
Yeah.
And you're gonna be judged either way. But
yeah, that separation.
All in all, and that's the thing. It's separation, but at the end of the day, someone is getting something in their pocket.
Right.
They don't care.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at all the pharmaceutical companies that have been collecting profits like crazy.
Yeah.
From all of this, and then you have, which we're now going to segue into the whole mandates, especially with the private organizations through OSHA.
Yeah.
And but the overall that it's like automatic money. It's like automatic.
That's all it is. It's more you're double dipping.
Right.
You know,
right.
it's a way to.
It's like screw whatever you choose. It's like here you're going to take it, and everybody's going to collect a piece of the pie. But you are the ultimate. Well, it's like that old saying: when it's free, you're the product.
Yeah.
Right. So, which that's a whole nother thing in itself. Like, for example, like Facebook, Google, all these online free services, majority of social media, you're using it for free.
Yeah.
But in reality, they're just collecting your data and they're selling it off to AdSense, which in turn makes money. Right, because you have to pay for AdSense, so on and so forth, right? So that's how they're making their money, and nobody takes into account the ethical value of your data that you're producing online. So your overall avatar, if you will, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but there's no care for that, because I told you in the past when, you know, one of my previous employments that I had to go to California constantly, right? And remember what I told you? Who was next to across the street from each other?
Yep. Facebook and Apple, right?
No, it wasn't Facebook and Apple. It was Google and Microsoft.
Oh.
Literally divided by a street.
Right.
So you think they're not working together to figure out like that's where the ethical stuff goes out the window.
Right.
You know, it's like you see all these massive corporations that are working in the same general area. They're all going to talk to each other because ultimately they'll all work.
They all
together.
have information to share.
Yeah. So again, it's sharing, it's putting something in their pocket, but the end result is nobody really cares.
Right.
I say that loosely, but it's, you know, it's really almost seeming like, okay, who cares what happens to the average Joe?
It's supposed to be the government.
Oh, here we go. Yeah.
No, I'm not gonna go on a tangent about that. But it's typically what's the reason. So the reason behind government is so that the average person or citizen can be not have to worry about the overall implications of the outside world to the individual.
Okay.
Right. It's overall a safety mechanism, if you will.
Oh, it's okay. So since you said safety mechanism,
okay.
So this whole mandate,
okay,
right? This OSHA mandate.
Oh, so safe.
Yeah, real safe. Yeah.
Oh, so safe.
So the federal government is supposed to act like a safety mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
Yet this mandate that they're trying to push now is basically saying you're either going to do A or B or get out because you're not going to have a job.
Right. And it's funny because of all the people that were going ahead of the curve, like a lot of the companies that, before it was even a mandate, before it was even a rule, rather.
Yeah.
Because technically speaking, it's supposed to be a rule, right? It's an OSHA rule.
Well, that's where it gets dicey. So...
yeah, you want to explain that?
So everyone knows that like OSHA is for the private employer. It's not for public. Public is something different. Like in New Jersey, for instance, you have POSHA, which is for public employees. It's the OSHA sector for public employees. Essentially, OSHA instituted what they're trying to institute, which I think it got to the 5th court. It got appealed.
Yeah, Fifth Circuit. Yeah,
5th Circuit Court got appealed. It went to the Sixth Circuit Court, and then it got overturned. So the appeal from the 5th Circuit got overturned, which allowed the mandate to progress.
Yeah.
But now I think it got to the Supreme Court level, and it's still kind of...
It's a slightly different case, but
Yeah,
yes.
it's still
because there was multiple cases out.
Yeah, so it's still out in the air. But what the OSHA did is they instituted something called an Emergency Temporary Standard. It's an ETS. So that gives them the power, which in my opinion they're overreaching. It gives them the power to use this mandate as a way to punish employees and employers. So by them stating it or making it as an emergency temporary standard,
Just to clarify, this is any employer over 100 employees?
it's 100 employees, which is the funny thing too, because if you work in certain sectors, OSHA requires you to report to them if you have 11 or more employees. Why they went 100 in this case, I really don't know. But certain industries are exempt from OSHA control.
Okay.
The other thing that people are freaking out about is because, OSHA. If people really realize how small they are, like, if you had to guess, right?
Right.
How many inspectors does you think OSHA has?
I would say a couple thousand.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So if I told you it was under 2,000 inspectors, including local offices in the state.
Whoa. This is nationwide, 2,000?
Nationwide, under 2,000.
Right. And
So-
they're underpaid too, right?
Yeah. Well, I can't speak directly to that because I don't know what they make. But the thing is basically if you were, let's say, an OSHA inspector, so the OSHA inspectors are responsible for about 130 million employees across 8 million job sites, which means if you were an inspector, you would be responsible for 70,000 employees.
So an OSHA inspector hitting your job site would be like winning the lottery.
Pretty much.
Oh, wow.
You're targeted. So
Right.
they have a list of certain industries that they target.
Right.
So depending on
Obviously, the more like toxic ones.
dangerous,
right.
Yeah, like somebody dies at your site.
Right. Yeah, they get.
You got to call them within like 8 hours. They come out, they do their thing, yada yada. But the way that they're using this mandate now is basically by issuing it as an ETS, as a standard, they can cite you for it. So, excuse me. What that means is if they show up and they ask, because now this is a standard relating to the unvax status of your employee.
Procedure, unprocedure.
Yeah, whatever. Or, it is what it is. They basically, if they come out and they ask for your records, they can look at your records and they can nail you for every single person that you have on your employee log that is.
Now, how much is that fine? Like, let's go over a scenario here. With
so it would probably fall under something as serious or other than serious, which is the lowest level of it. But that's, last I checked, it was just under 14 grand
per incident.
per incident.
Per incident.
Yeah.
Wow.
They could cut you some leeway. They work a lot on good faith.
But again, too, this has to do with the fact that if they show up.
That's if they show up, yeah.
Right.
So if
they have to physically be present, or can they like issue these things like remotely, let's say?
they physically have to see evidence of it.
Okay.
So they can't just do, well, given this current situation, I don't know if they're doing things remote or not, but they have to physically see the evidence. The thing is, too, if they happen to show up, you can't tell them no.
Right.
You're done. If they show up and they show their badge to say that, I'm with,
Because they could just shut down whatever the job is, right?
They come out. It's not that they can shut it down. They'll
suspend.
They'll fine you right then and there for not letting them on. Like, you have to let them in your facility. You have
Right.
to. End of story. If they show up.
Yeah, and we were having this conversation earlier in the week.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned that if OSHA shows up and it's something, I'd say, on the outside, right? You were talking about this?
Yeah, anything that they see in their field of vision when they get on site, they can get you for.
Right.
It doesn't matter. So if they're here to look at, somebody
The garbage disposal or something.
somebody complained about being exposed to something that was potentially harming them.
Right.
So they come on site, they walk around, You know, the way they walk, anything in their pathway that they see, they could potentially get you for.
Right, but if it's something, say, on the outside of a building of this establishment or company, and they get called for that, they inspect that. You don't let them in.
It depends on
Because then it's in their purview.
It depends on what they want to see. You have to, if they have to disclose certain things. Again, I haven't really encountered them. I encountered them once in my 12 years of doing this work.
Wow, that says a lot.
Yeah,
that says a lot.
So I encountered them once, and you know, it's one of those things where they'll have a list, they'll have a complaint, they'll verify a lot. They know a lot of times it's like a disgruntled employee or whatever. So half the time they'll just brush it off. If it's something serious, though, they will show up.
Yeah, but how do you think they're taking this whole, like, with the whole mandate thing? Like, I mean, you think they're really going to take it seriously?
They're justifying this.
And another thing too, real quick, how do they choose what kind of person becomes an inspector? Like, how does that work? Like, is it other chemical engineers like yourself? Is it people that are HR people? Like, is it just some dude off the street? Like, do they do training? Like, how does that work?
That I can't speak of directly,
No?
but if
Okay.
I had to guess, it would be based on experience. So if you have certain credentials that relate to that field, you do. I know you go through a training program when you're in with them. I think you follow somebody higher up.
God,
and
how many different things you got to learn?
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff, but the way that they're running this now is, so to give you some idea or some idea on the last time they did this was with what we were talking about with asbestos. That's the last time they tried to use this ETS thing. That went out the window. No.
For asbestos?
Yeah, they said no because there was no backing to it.
Wow.
What they're doing now is they're trying to justify that, if we monitor this.
Right, and I think that's what was and I was listening to the Supreme, I'm not to cut you off, but I was listening to Supreme Court hearings on Friday, and the Biden administration's advocate or lawyer was mentioning that they have the ability to do this based on the 1970 something, and I think it had to do exactly what you were talking about.
Oh, the OSHA Act?
Not the OSHA Act, but there was another act that came out of asbestos after OSHA was formed that had to be in terms of workplace safety, something or other.
Well,
damn, I'm butchering the whole thing. I should have written down those notes when I was listening to it, but
nah, it's because it's a fairly new agency, so it's only been since I think it's been 1970 when it came in.
Right, it came about like right around the EPA. Yeah, because the EPA was like in the mid 70s, and I think
this was before.
Oh, it was.
It may have been slightly before. So it was just meant to protect, because there was no structure into protecting the employee. So now it's basically using this as, all right, well, we're protecting the employee, but I honestly think they're overreaching because they don't have really grounds to stand on. It's kind of like, it's like we were saying, where you're double dipping. So you're protected by certain things. So, if you have an issue, if you're working somewhere and if this goes through, let's say, and you're working somewhere and certain people aren't complying with this rule, what's stopping you from just calling them in?
You mean calling in that employee?
No, calling in, no, you don't call in the employee. You just call, you call OSHA directly.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
They
I'm sorry, I got mixed up. Yeah.
and they come and verify.
Right.
And they walk in the door. Now,
show me your papers.
Exactly. And they
they
show you, right? And then they find all these issues. Now, you can't really do anything to the employee because you're covered.
So now here's what bothers the hell out of me, right? So you have these mandates. We don't know the long-term effects of getting this procedure, right? So now you're forced to get these procedures because you're required to in order for you to make a living, in order for you to feed yourself, in order for you to feed your family and have a life, right? Now, you could leave and find another job that doesn't require you to get these mandates because of either number of...
It's just a number. That's what they're justifying.
Right. So now here's my whole thing, right? Traditionally, because of Nixon, he passed a bill that said that you are not able to sue pharmaceutical companies based on injury of a vaccine. Quote, vaccine in particular, right? A lot of people have argued that this procedure is not a vaccine. I tend to agree with that. I look at it more like a procedure, more like a treatment, if you will.
Yeah.
In which case you can sue the pharmaceutical companies for that. But because it is labeled a vaccine, because it is under emergency authorization, you're not able, if there were some sort of side effects, whether it's immediate or whether it's down the line. You know, how many drugs have we had in the past 20 years where it's caused adverse effects, you know, and people have had their livelihoods destroyed because of taking this particular procedure.
Yeah.
Or, I'm sorry, drug or whatever the case is, right? So now OSHA is enforcing this. To me, that sounds more like a stop-o talk, but they're enforcing this and they're allowing people to get along with this. And all of a sudden, you know, you have 10 years down the line and you have this widespread issue that's causing through the population because they've taken this now procedure.
Yeah.
Okay. Who do you go after? You can't go after OSHA, right? You can't go after the pharmaceutical company. You can't go after your employer because the employer wasn't the one that forced you.
No.
Because it was an OSHA regulation or a rule. So now, what do you do? What do I do? What does fucking Bob over here do? You know, what do we do to make good on this? There's nothing we can do. Do we do a class action lawsuit? No, because the courts will deem it. There's no ability for you to sue based on the vaccine. Now, it'd have to be perhaps Supreme Court. It'd have to be taken all the way up to Supreme Court, and they'd have to reissue looking at the vaccine overall or vaccine characteristics and overall that bill or law in order for you to really take focus and come up with a solution to this issue. Now, that I'm not saying, I'm just speculating here, right? This is clearly speculation, but it could be that nothing comes out of this, right? Everybody's fine, everybody's hunky-dory, no problems, whatever, this and that, right?
Yeah.
But also, too, keep something in mind, for example, the days after 9/11. How many of those people developed mesothelioma? Because of the air, and they were deemed, oh, you can go back to work. You can come back into the area. Meanwhile, the air was saturated with asbestos, amongst many other things, concrete, silica, things of that nature that you know about, right? And they breathe it in, and now they're dealing with cancers and so on and so forth to the point where there's a fund from the federal government to pay these people off. Now, amplify that, and you're talking, what are we talking here? Maybe like 15,000 people, I think it is, that's overall been affected by that. And that's not counting secondary in terms of like their children, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Right. So now you're talking billions of dollars on that. Right. So now you amplify that with how many millions of people that have taken it. Right. Even if you take a small percentage, say it's like a 5%. Right. So you're talking 150 million people. Right. So now you take 5% of that. And 150 million is like half the population of the U.S., give or take. Right. Which number, the percentage is obviously higher, people that have taken the procedure. Yeah. So now you take 5% of that. Well, what are we at here? What's the number? What are we looking at? A couple mil? Let's just say for sake of argument.
750,000, roughly.
Right. Right. So
$3/4 of a mil.
Right. That's 5%. Okay. So say that's 5% adversely over a period of time. Right. You're talking, and what I said with the 9/11 thing was 15,000, 20,000, I think it is, somewhere around there, right? Give or take.
Something about that, yeah.
Okay. Now you're timing that by X amount, right? Who's going to pay for that? We are.
Of course we are.
As citizens.
But you make...
Should we have to? Yeah, of course, because we got to look out for one another. But at the same time, too, was it our fault? No, because a lot of people were like, oh, whether it's fear-based or whether it's you feel the need to do good, at the same time, too, there are people out there that didn't want to get it.
Yeah.
They were forced to.
Yeah, and that's, well,
I think if you're forced to, in the future, if you have an issue, you should receive a settlement. I'm saying this today. It's in a recording. I'm putting it on record.
Yeah.
So.
But it all depends. So that's their saving grace is how they wrote it.
Okay.
So they basically said, all right, your employees either need to be vaccinated
or tested. Right.
Now, nowhere there, though, I believe, because I kind of glazed over the standard.
Okay. If you want to go more in depth, go for it.
Nowhere there does it state whether the employer is mandated to provide the testing for the employees.
So it has to come out of their pocket, the employer's pocket.
The employee's pocket, not the employer.
So if an employee is exposed to this virus via someone else and they have to go get tested on their own time, the employer will not pay for that time lost.
Well, no, that's in effect still. So the
okay.
Companies have ways to allocate and get people extra, PTO or if they're confirmed,
pay time off for those that don't know what PTO is.
Pay time off, or they're confirmed to have this virus. They will be paid for it. The thing is, this mandate, the way it's written, I don't believe it states or stipulates that as part of this mandate. So let's take your job, right?
Okay.
So if you are vaccinated, you're fine. You have to provide record to your employer that you are, and that's it.
Right.
If you're not, you have to test every week.
Right.
That comes out of your pocket.
By the way, not the case. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. It would come out of your pocket.
But I thought all testing was free.
I understand it, but if it actually switches and transitions to where it's not free anymore,
are the insurance companies going to cover this?
Oh, they're covering it now, but who knows what's going to change?
For how long?
Exactly.
Right.
Who knows? And that's the thing, is I don't really see this mandate, and a lot of big companies, a lot of big corporations are already jumping the gun because they don't know what's going to happen.
Well, they have been since day one, since Biden even opened his mouth about it.
It's a crapshoot. Nobody really knows.
Right.
Right now, from what I've read, it's kind of split. The Supreme Court is saying, well, certain people are saying, okay, yes. Other ones are like, no, they're overreaching. They're kind of extending their power to where it shouldn't be.
Right.
But who knows? We don't know. Unfortunately, do I think it's right? No. I see it as a way where you're putting something out there so you can punish people for not complying. So your freedom of, listen, if you have it or you don't have it, if you got the procedure, the mandate, whatever you want to call it, or you didn't, that's your choice.
Yeah.
End of story. That's how it should be.
It's on an individual basis. That's how it should be.
Yeah. This now is getting to the point where, all right, I'm going to punish you.
Right.
And your workplace, if you either get it, so you get the procedure done,
right,
and end of story, or
times 3,
or you're gonna, and in some cases times 4, because Israel already pushed the 4th.
Yep.
And then you have that.
Israel's been the bell curve for this whole thing,
of course. And then you go that way, where it's all right. You're either gonna get the procedure done, and you're all said and done. That's it, or you don't. But to keep your job, you have to test yourself every week. So if you go that route, eventually they're going to say, all right, we can't cover this anymore. You're going to have to pay for it out of your pocket.
Right.
And
if you can't, then you can't work here.
And you can't work here.
Right.
So it's kind of like, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. So that's why I really don't see it, progressing any further. I really see it as though, and just coming from my outlook on things, I think this mandate is bullshit.
It is.
I literally think it's bullshit. Yeah. It's the way I see it is this is a way to have somebody in a job site at a place of employment basically say, it gives them the free reign to be like, look, I don't like you, so I'm going to throw you under the bus. And then when I throw you under the bus, nobody can do anything to me. The job can get hit we were discussing it. You have 10 people, let's say, that aren't doing the testing every week, let's say, right? That's like $140,000.
So here's the thing too, right? That something we didn't even touch upon, right? Because it's counteracting the overall narrative, if you will, of this thing. If you receive this procedure, let me ask you, can you stop it from being passed on? The answer is no, right?
No.
Right. Okay. Will it stop you from potentially dying from receiving the virus after you receive the procedure? The answer is no.
Oh.
Okay. But biggest of all, right? Because Here's what's bothering me about this whole thing, right? About this whole procedure and the push for it and so on and so forth, right? It's been primarily that why are you being forced to get this procedure done if it does not stop you from spreading it? Or if you cannot show me to a large degree of certainty, right, that it will lower the spread of this. I'm not saying, because, okay, listen, and I already have a problem with the fact that it's called what it is. Right? I'm calling it a procedure so I can kind of bypass the overall algorithm that's on YouTube, right? Yeah. But we all know what the hell we're talking about here, right? Okay. It shouldn't be called that. It should be called a treatment, number one. Number two, if it were, then it would have no legs to stand on.
Yeah.
Right? All right. So that's why they call it what they call it, right? Number three, if it were to work as it should have been advertised from the beginning. Now, I get it. Things change. The science changed. Oh, my God. Can you believe it? Science is able to change. It is not absolute. That's another thing that drives me absolutely freaking crazy about this whole thing, right?
Yep.
Okay. That being said, before I go too far off on the deep end of ranting on this thing, right? It's not as effective as it should be. And I may be penalized. Maybe somebody will physically look at this video and say, you can't say that. Why the hell not? If those are the facts, if that is what is being shown generally in the public, then why the hell can I say that this shit doesn't work? Because it doesn't. So why are you forcing people to get this thing for something that is ineffective? I'll tell you right now, I will state it right here. I will state it today. If they develop some sort of treatment, some sort of Vx, right? Okay. If they develop something like that where it stops the transmission of a deadly virus, okay? First of all, that's another thing too. This whole virus, you have a 99 point whatever percentage survivability rate. Now, the point whatever has changed throughout 2 years. That is ridiculous in itself.
Yeah.
But it's 99%, right? Solid 99. Okay. If you're able to survive that, you've had it. I've had it. Okay. We've survived it. Many people we know have had it. This is going to touch everybody, whether we want to or not. There are still some lucky few out there that have not received neither nor the procedure nor have contracted the overall virus. Yeah. Amazing to me. But especially one person I know in particular that is a teacher, which is just fascinating to me in itself.
That's shocking.
Yeah. You know who you are. But needless to say, okay, what the hell is the point, right? Which is what people in the conspiracy theory community, if you will, have been pulling apart at the threads. Yeah. Now, a lot of these people, much like, and I highly suggest if you guys find this interesting, reach out and check out Jason Burmis on either YouTube or Rockfin. Highly recommend him. The guy knows what he's talking about, right? I won't say Alex Jones because he's been ostracized and so on and so forth. If you follow him, you follow him. If not, so be it. But the point of what I'm trying to get at is it doesn't make sense.
No, it's a crapshoot.
It doesn't. If the dude that literally developed the technology that built this thing is getting thrown to the wind and ostracized, right? And thrown off all these different platforms, right? We have the First Amendment, so we have freedom of speech. Yeah, it's private companies, whatever. We can make that argument up and down all day we want, right? But at the end of the day, it's a soapbox. Yeah. That's all it is. Okay? Your voice is your voice, period. End of the story. Why? That's all I ask people. Stop, think about it. You can say I'm a coup. You can say I'm trying to kill grandma. Whatever the hell makes you sleep at night in terms of a different person's perspective and what I am saying. Okay, stop and think about it. Sit outside of the overall perspective. Sit up there, right? Sit over there. You're looking down at us. We're having this conversation. Yeah. And ask yourself, outside of your biases, why is this such a giant push? And I'm sorry, I'm done with my rant. I don't know.
No, it's a valid rant because it never happens this way. Like what? No. I don't understand why they're trying to push to make everybody that is at work.
It doesn't work, dude.
To follow this. Yeah. You know, it doesn't make any sense. Like, what do you get out of this? Their basis is, oh, it's gonna protect work. I was like, no, it's a way for you to punish people.
Right.
Because I don't know if you know this, but the way they mandate it, OSHA, is if you have a virus case in your workplace and somebody gets it from another employee at the job, you have to report it as a workplace injury.
Oh, goodness.
So that's how they're...
Can you collect workers' comp?
No. That I don't know.
If you're labeling it that way, that's a workers' comp case.
You're right. Technically, that's a valid point. I didn't think about it that way. But you have to write it as a workplace-related illness.
Right.
So, but the thing is like, I don't understand how can you... What's the basis of doing this? Like, why am I going to punish somebody because I'm basically taking away their choice? You have two choices, essentially. Either, all right, you're going to get it, or you're not, and you're going to have to stick a Q-tip up your nose every week. And it's...
For a lot of our friends, there's nothing up that nose. But
pretty much. Valid point.
Sorry, I had to make my joke in.
Sorry, thankfully Brown said that and not me.
Wow. Listen, I ain't lying out here.
Oh, here we go. But it's one of those where they're trying to shove this thing down your throat, and it's never happened for anything else. Like, we've spoken before that I swear this is the plot of fucking V for Vendetta.
So,
this is
funny you mentioned that.
This is legit the plot for V for Vendetta, the way this is going. It's like, all right.
The St. Mary's virus.
Yeah, exactly. So it hit a children's hospital, it hit a water treatment plant, and it hit transportation.
I haven't watched that movie in a while, but
I love that movie.
I do know it very, very well.
That's one of my favorite movies. And it's funny because I
shout out to Natalie Portman. You can get it, girl.
Here we go. But, you know my younger brother. I told him, I was like, when this whole thing came out, I'm like, yo, do yourself a favor, go watch the movie. And he's like, why? Watch it. You watch the movie.
Because he was too young to watch it at the time when it came out.
But he saw it, and he calls me. He's like, yo, holy shit. I was like,
it's like they pulled the full plot.
It's funny, right?
And they applied it.
It's like, all right, we got somebody in office who I think did a good job. I'm not going to get into politics, but I think he did a phenomenal job. He did what he had to do. People can...
Some say he was huge.
Yeah, huge. But, he did what he had to do. He didn't take any of the bullshit.
All right.
Other elitists didn't like him. So let's put a puppet in the office.
Because he didn't play ball.
Of course he didn't. So let's put a puppet in the office. In my opinion, he's a puppet.
Right.
We
just can't question the overall process that took place because that is part of YouTube guidelines.
We're not going to get into that. So he comes in.
Sucks playing on the battlefield, but
all of a sudden, magically, there's a vaccine or a procedure for this. Really? I was like, I'm thinking when I saw this whole thing happen, I'm like, Joe, this is like a movie. Like I recall it.
Right.
So I'm like, all right, there's a problem. People are getting sick. Listen, there's something is this virus.
Push.
This virus is something. Okay. Right. I'm not saying that it isn't a real thing. It's something. Like you said, I had it. I had no symptoms, which I was kind of really confused about.
Lucky bastard.
I was like...
And not that I had them bad, but...
I was locked away at home during the holiday season, like, I can't really do anything, so...
Yeah. And you had the scare this holiday season, too.
Yes, sir. And
because Drew was supposed to be tagging along with us last week, and he had a scare from a number of different individuals that did catch the virus.
Yeah.
And so he did the responsible thing and stood away and just let it kind of play its course and see what would happen. So luckily you didn't catch it.
Yeah, I didn't have anything. So. But listen, there's something, whatever it is, nobody will know. Will they ever tell us? No. Yeah. They won't tell us. But now they're using it as a ploy to legit, again, OSHA is the Department of Labor.
Yes.
Which is a branch of it's a department for the federal government.
Right.
So tell me how you're not trying to double dip in this whole...
Well, of course.
This whole thing that's going on by saying, all right, well, if you're not going to do what we want you to do, you're going to get punished and we're going to put this mandate on you and that's it. You're either going to do it, you're going to follow suit with it, or we're going to fine you anyway.
So, you know, it's funny. It's like, if you think about it like this, right? If the government was planning to make as much money as possible, right? Mm-hmm. You want to keep everybody at work because income tax, right? Of course, right? Yeah, obviously. Now you're preventing that, so you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot here, or you're creating you're hyperinflating a crisis, because hyperinflation is a big term these days. Also, too, it's a mass psychosis, which is another big term that's being used these days. But something I didn't want to cover, but we kind of glossed over that because of the conversation that we've just been having, just been flowing so well, you know. But overall, it's like, why the hell would you even, how should I put this, want to not make money? Well, if you're not getting it from one end, you're getting it from the other, right? Because nobody's going to leave money on the table, especially if you're government.
No, you're not. But
right.
The way
so who's paying government?
Well, the way you're running
Big Pharma?
More than likely.
Right. So who gave Big Pharma the technology for this procedure? The government, right? To Giant Cycle. See here? Giant Cycle.
It's all continuous.
It's all developed by DARPA, which we spoke about off air.
Yeah.
Right. So for those of you that aren't familiar with DARPA, I highly recommend it. Check out Annie Jacobson's book on Pentagon's Brain. Excuse me. It took me a little while to fucking reach into my brain. But check out Pentagon's Brain. Highly, highly, highly recommend that book. She's an absolutely great journalist that has taken deep dives into what ARPA, post-World War II ARPA, and then DARPA, and the whole storyline that led one thing into another, and overall where we stand today, or relatively recently, with the development of technology. And I had mentioned this in a previous podcast that like the whole aliens drones thing, I'm sure you heard about that, right? And God knows what the hell else is coming up, but the technology that was used for this procedure, who the gentleman whose name I won't mention was ostracized and was on Joe Rogan, okay, that helped develop. He's not the inventor, because a lot of people are like, oh, he invented it. No, he didn't invent it. He helped with the overall procedure. And the reason why the government was involved is because DARPA, all they do is, oh, you're working on this stuff. Okay, we're going to fund you.
Yeah. Right.
And then they help push the progression, and they figure out, okay, this may have further potential, so let's reach another phase of it. Now you're coming to work with us. But there's always a company involved, and the first company that gets involved with that, which in this case, I can say their name. So Moderna was involved with the overall development of this procedure, right, in the technology, the mRNA technology, and they were the ones that stood to benefit the most because they were the ones that put the overall front money in terms of development, you see here. So now, as soon as it becomes ready for market, as it's become, but they weren't the only pharmaceutical company, but they were the first and best dressed.
Yeah.
Merck came in behind them, and then Pfizer, so on and so forth, and that's why you're seeing a lot of these things. But obviously, Merck doesn't have their own procedure that's out there right now in the world. But they did develop, based on that technology, they are developing the therapeutic for the virus.
Yeah.
That they've been having trouble to get to market because they've had certain setbacks. Okay.
Shocker.
Which is not surprising because it's something that's being developed that quickly. And you got to remember, too, this technology, the people that went along with developing this technology, it was designed for two things primarily. One, it was to combat cancer, okay? And two, was to combat AIDS. And you know what this virus and AIDS have in common? I'll give you a hint, St. Fauci. So
lovely.
Yeah. I mean,
lovely.
Listen, I can go on about this stuff, but the point is I want to try to leave this episode off on a light note because we're closing in here on 2 hours. And those that have been listening to this point, thank you. And I'm going to do my call to action right now, as it's referred to in the podcast world. Please reach out to me on Twitter, Instagram, and even YouTube. Leave a comment, subscribe. That's a new thing. That's a new thing I got to get used to saying. Leave a like, subscribe, comment. Let me know what you guys think, man. Give me some feedback here. Like, are we talking about things that you want to hear about? You know, for those of you that know me personally, that have reached out to me personally, I'm sorry I didn't mention this earlier, but thank you so much for giving me so much positivity, so much love, so much respect, and motivation to keep this thing moving. And I I do like doing this. This is fun to me.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, Drew, you've known me forever, dude.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah, we've known each other for a very long time. Out of all my guests here, I think it's a tie between Drew and Rick in terms of how long people have known me.
Yeah, since what, 18? Yeah, probably 18.
18 years old, yeah, they're about. We won't go into how we first met, but that's besides the
Yeah, that's a whole other topic on itself.
That's a good
we
one.
Will not
That's a
go
good
there.
one. Maybe
No.
one day.
No.
Maybe
no,
one day.
No. No, that's locked up. Throw away the key.
Oh, yeah. So, but I do appreciate each and every one of you reaching out to me personally. However, it would mean a lot more to me if you would just leave me a comment, man. Leave me a comment on YouTube. Let me know, because you know I'm not trying to make a living off of this. I'm doing this for fun. I'm doing this for because I feel like I need to do my part in this culture war that we're dealing with, and this world and society, this madness, and you know, I've always felt like I need to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and you've known me too. I've never been one to kind of keep my mouth shut about certain things. So
That's true.
So
Certain things you should keep your mouth shut about, but other ones, no. You voice your opinion.
How much alcohol did I have to drink? That's what matters.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, man, guys, listen. I appreciate you. I love each and every one of you for leaving me so much love down the line. Shout out to Big Wayne, Planet Boxer, out there on the IGs.
Oh, you gotta hit the button.
Oh, hold on, Wayne. I got something for you, buddy.
You gotta hit the button.
You know, it's an inside joke, but whatever. Okay, moving on. Yeah, I think we're good here, man. You know, I don't want to go too much more in depth in this thing. I don't want to get too political, dude. We covered a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot.
We definitely covered a lot here.
Definitely a lot, but
it's been fun.
Yeah,
it's been real.
It's been interesting, and you know, like I told you, I'm one of the people that, you know, I know you wanted to get this done. You got it going.
Yeah. I'm
happy you did.
Thank you.
Super proud that you're running with it.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
And just stick with it. You know, the biggest mistake people make in life is they start off something, then they quit. Just stick with it and keep going.
Yeah, my wife actually goes to me earlier. Just a real quick story. My wife goes to me. She's like, "Oh, you know, next week we got this, that, and the third going on." I said, "Okay, when I'm gonna be able to record?" She's like, "Yeah, we're gonna be tied up." And I'm like, she's like, "Oh, you can miss a week." I was like, "No, I got to be consistent in this, whether or not my product is good." By product, I mean this overall, this thing that I have going here, the podcast, the videos, the whole thing, the conversation, whether or not it's good or it's high quality is left up to the overall eye of the beholder, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
It's just like beauty is. So, but the more you do something, the better you get at it.
Of course.
Right. And luckily I've been blessed enough, because that's the best word I could think of, that people have told me that I actually have kind of a knack for this. Now, I'm not letting that get to my head. I'm really not, because I'm not that kind of person. I have been in the past, and you know this.
Yeah.
But I've learned to not let these things, while I do appreciate them, while they are very strong words, and I do like, you know, when I hear them, I don't let it get to me. I don't let it weigh me one way or another. You know what I mean? So I just got to keep on doing what I do. Because I enjoy doing it. It's been a love effort, you know, to do this. And nothing good or nothing worthwhile ever comes easy.
No, nothing.
So, by the way, just to keep you guys updated for next week. I don't, to be quite honest with you, I don't exactly have a guest lined up, but I do have a couple people that I'm going to reach out to. Hopefully they can come back on, or maybe some of those that I'm reaching out to are new, and we'll be having whatever the conversation is. You know what I mean? Because everything changes from one day to another, and you know, got to make it worthwhile.
Yeah.
Drew, buddy.
Yeah. Buddy.
Thank you.
Not a problem, pal.
Buddy, old pal.
I've known you way too long.
Yeah, you have. Too long, some would say.
Wow, really?
By the way, for those friends of ours that have been wondering about you, Drew is alive and well, as you can see him here.
Yes, I'm alive and kicking. Just busy working.
Busy with life.
Yeah, facts.
Yeah.
It's been crazy, but no,
Yeah.
I'm glad that you know, I had the time to come out here, be on your podcast.
Yeah, man, I
It's
appreciate
been
it.
a pleasure. Definitely interesting
Yeah.
and fun,
Yeah.
to say the least.
You learned a little bit something about yourself, too.
Yeah.
Being behind a microphone and whatnot.
Yeah, true.
That's the thing. Everybody that I've had on, everybody had never been behind a microphone before I got them on the podcast. And it's like, once they're on, they're like, yo, I could see why it's so, like, fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting.
So, all right, guys. I thank you. Please reach out to me on the socials. Everything that you need is in the show notes below or the description if you're watching on YouTube. Feel free to... Oh, by the way, too, before I forget, leave a rating on either Apple Podcast or Spotify. Whatever your rating is, just leave something. It would greatly appreciate the overall interaction with you guys as a whole. Well, this has been Mike Brown. Drew, thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
This has been the Chop Block, and just always remember to just have yourself a good time.